Muhammad Sikandar, can you hear me?
Oh, okay.
Oh, ini mereka nggak bisa bilang suara saya ya? Tes. Halo. Murshid Carlos. Hello, how are you doing today? Good morning, Murshid or Tasnim.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay, boleh.
Oh, Murshid takut dengan katanya Murshid takut dengan Prof. Norsida ya. Jadi
Iya.
tampak anak Murshid itu.
Musyid tunjuk muka Musyid.
Oh, saya kejap tak berapa Prof ni doktor.
Oke, let's start today ya. Oke.
Ya.
Tuh, handsome.
Oh, pantas tak mau tambah muda dia belum sisiran dia.
Rambutnya baru bangun tidur.
Belum mandi.
Ah,
Bangun awal sudah sebelum subuh lagi bangun, tapi itulah. Malu.
Malu. Tasnim, apa kabar today? Where's your boy? I saw your boy or your I think your boy.
My daughter.
Dah sekolah dia enggak tahu.
Sudah jadi satu.
Yeah. Okay, I want to say hello to some online participants. Syahrul Alamsyah. Hello Syahrul, how are you today? Syahrul
Tidur lagi.
Syahrul from Vistula University, Poland, if I'm not wrong. You from Poland, right? Indonesian, but now studying in Poland. Okay, now. Okay, good morning, everybody. So today is the second day of our summer course and the last day of our Bogor program. So please carefully do your assignment. I already have here Mr. Noor, yeah. And I also have here Prof. Norsida. Prof. Norsida already gave a lecture yesterday, Mr. Nanda. Yeah, Prof. Norsida is a professor from UPM, Malaysia, and he bring 4 students, PhD students and students from UPM. Okay, everybody. Today, Mr. Nanda, we have Mr. Nanda. Mr. Nanda Asri maaf Mas Nanda. Okay. Mr. Nanda Asri Noor now is the principal for policy and program at New Think Tank Indonesian Business Council, and he serves as the go-to person for strategic research, multi-stakeholder engagement, and impact delivery in the areas of Indonesia's competitiveness and welfare. Before IBC, Mr. Nanda served as the Sustainable Business and Corporate Engagement Manager for the World Resource Institute Indonesia, in collaboration with subnational governments and communities, and he leads project and policy research on net zero emissions targeting, sustainable lifestyle and forest restoration, and environmental business modeling in Indonesia. Prior to WRI, Mr. Nanda worked on sustainability consulting projects pertaining to material-intensive operations in Papua, social enterprise modeling and public procurement. And during his time at the United Nations, Mr. Nanda also assisted ecosystem service evaluation study in Jambi and UN's effort on aligning 2030 SDGs with Indonesia government national medium-term development plan. Mr. Nanda earned a Bachelor of Science Management from ITB, Bandung Institute of Technology, Indonesia, followed by Master of Science from Lund University in Environmental Management and Policy. Yeah, Lund University is in Sweden, yeah, Nanda, yeah. Okay, and this is interesting. Nanda's interests are reading non-fiction, watching true story movies, and learning new languages. How many languages you
Korea can? Korea?
That part, not so much good.
Okay. But this learning new languages, yeah. Korea, how about Korea? Yeah. From tidak like Korean movie.
Yeah. Spanish.
Oh, Spanish.
Okay,
Tak
yeah.
tahu.
Mr. Nanda's hobbies include listening to classical music, playing tennis, and beach and forest trekking. Okay, very nature. Yeah, very active in natural activities. Okay, Mr. Nanda, the stage is yours.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, everyone. Hello. Very pleased to be here. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. I was hoping to be able to use the microphone so that I can walk around, but it's fine. Okay. All right. Then let me just use my.
Sharing.
Okay. So yeah, consider this work. Then I hope everyone is okay with me standing and walking around because it gives more energy, to the room. And I don't want to be, talking too much while I'm sitting and then, just giving it a one-way direction of discussion. Because I really hope that we can. I don't know how many minutes that we have put, but I'm open if anyone wants to cut me in the middle of my slides. If you have 45 minutes, yes. Including Q&A or just for the presentation. Okay, so yeah, just be fluid, everyone. Don't bother if you have questions. You want to put it in the end, or you want to ask right in the middle of my presentation. If it's a quick question, that's fine. Yeah. So again, Nanda, I'm from. I used to say WRI, but not anymore. So I finished my WRI career 2-3 months ago, and the usual times where I had this presentation was from WRI moments. But now I'm in Indonesia Business Council. I'm going to have a few slides to introduce what it is about, because it's quite a new think tank. Put my screen on right now. There we go. Yeah. So my presentation today is going to present to you a bit, and this is something that we could learn together. And I'm putting a lot of pictures and context of young people here because I want to show the potential and challenges that young people have in order to address this issue. But before going deep into this question, can I ask Prof. Noor, what was the topic of your presentation yesterday, so I can connect these stories?
ESG emission in agriculture.
ESG.
ESG greenhouse gases.
Yeah, emission in agriculture. All right. There should be some connection in which
carbon footprint.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then there is a connection in which I will talk a bit about forestry later on and how it connects with climate change and carbon emissions in relation to perhaps Nonsida's point later on. So please add if I said anything silly, Professor. So yes, everyone. So the topic here I wanted to highlight to you first. The name of the session is Climate Change Inside Out: Measuring Carbon Footprint Easily and Accountably. So the point where I want to make very first now is the inside out part. Why do I call it inside out? Because when you want to change climate, which is a very external thing, climate is an environmental thing. Environment is anything that's not us, right? So as long as it's not human, then it's environment, including flora and fauna, right? But when you want to make a change towards the climate change, because we know the climate is changing already, I will show you some slides later on how it is changing. But if you want to change the climate first, we need to change ourselves first, right? So it comes from the inside, but it doesn't stop there. It has to go outside. That's why the picture here shows the two different cities in the world, developed one and developing one, New York and Jakarta, on the same day, on 20th September 2019, just before the pandemic. People are still going out to the streets. This is good because people are showing, especially you can see there, perhaps most of them are young people who are brave and innovative in their way of expressing their opinions. New York and Jakarta, they are both doing the same thing. And we know that then people are aware already, right? But what we don't really know, and we have yet to see from this picture, is how much people are acting it out. Not just raising their voice and opinions, but also doing it into, making it into a reality by doing action. And that's why the topic, the title of the presentation, not the topic, the title is Net Zero Emission, Fantasy or Reality. So, and the way that we are going to here now, the scope of my presentation is on the measurement of carbon footprint, because we don't know how much we should and could act on climate change unless we measure it first. That's how we can then manage it later and also make it accountable and make it, responsible actions. So, there we go. Yeah. So, but before going deeper, I promised to you that I'm going to explain a bit about what IBC is. The name doesn't explain itself. It's very, very broad, unlike other organizations. But it says that Indonesia is the country where we are now in sort of a trap. If we stay in the current trajectory, we may still be in the middle income and advancing nation by 2045, for example, where we will be having our 100-year independence, right? So the idea of IBC is to break that boundary and think differently on how we can improve, one, competitiveness, and second, welfare of the Indonesian society. How we are going to do this is by optimizing the potential to be an advanced nation that are capable of competing, but also balancing the progress with inclusive growth and also providing fair opportunities for everyone. So when we talk about making the country bigger, then it's not just about higher income, better GDP per capita, but also fair and just nation. Good employment, balanced health, good education, stuff like that. Yeah. And we are going to measure that using a significant improvement in, you may have heard this before, a global competitiveness index, which ranks 100 countries in the world where we are in our competitiveness ranking. And by competitiveness, let's not think about, being hardly competitive that we always want to beat other countries. No, that's not the point. Competitive means you are going to be able to position yourself in the world stage that you can contribute to something. You have to be competing to them because competition brings innovation. It brings productivity, and then it brings you to a position where you can then collaborate further with others and produce something better. This is why our message is to be comprehensive and inclusive, and this is quite obvious. Prosperity, planet, people, and in the middle of it, governance, quite obvious. Yeah, that's the answer to how we address things. And then within it, there's growth and livelihood and circularity. At the think tank, we produce and publicize research, outlook, and advocacy based on science and ground impact. There is a huge gap there between what the science says on paper and then also what gets implemented on the ground. So that's why, in addition to the think tank, we also do things. Okay, so a bit deeper on that, who are we? Is that we comprises of strong and prominent network of members. So if you can name 10, 15, 20 biggest business CEOs or leaders or founders of Indonesian companies, then most likely they are the members of our organization. So you can imagine the capacity that we can build from utilizing their management team and then wide and deep knowledge. There are lots of financing commitment as well and good professional governance. To do this, we combine the economic growth, social empowerment, and environmental sustainability to build partnership across different stakeholders: business to business, business to government, government to government, regional and global level, and so on. So key activities include survey research, knowledge product, policy dialogue, and then advocacy. So begins from knowing what's needed on paper, and then also turning it into good engagement strategy, and then implementation of it, and including its advisor. Then it's been done by combining strength between organizational capabilities and also technology and management system. Because we cannot deny that digitalization becomes one of the main tools today in order for us to achieve anything that we need. Now, a bit more on the research topic before I delve into the why I choose to deliver the lecture today on emission carbon footprint. It's also why Indonesia is positioned not at the best tier country in the world in terms of competitiveness, right? So there's a starting point. It's a well-known comparative base. You can Google it later. It's called IMD Global Competitiveness Index. So IMD is an international institute for management development in Switzerland. They have been doing this since 1989, ranking 64 countries in the world on the level of competitiveness using empirical theories, latest research, and then comprehensive evaluation and measurement methods. Of all those situations, Indonesia in 2023 is only ranked 34 out of 64. We were even worse actually in 2022, which was positioned at 44. So there was actually a really good jump from 44 to 34 for the last year, but it's not enough. Using the potential now, we were actually even not better than Malaysia. So we still need to catch up with you.
Following fast.
Yeah. So so you can see the determinants, the variable of those competitiveness, economic performance, government efficiency, business efficiency, and basic infrastructure, and then lots of variables within it, right? The one in red are the ones that I highlighted as the points where we are very lucky. The rank is pretty low. It's either 36 below, right? Or even 39 below. So we are still in the lowest 40 percentile, right? And that's where we need to improve the most. We group then our products, our activities based on how we improve productivity and efficiency, improve our climate, our health, and our education. And the main area to this is to improve the institutional framework or how we address business legislation as well. So in this topic today, I'm going to zoom into the climate part and see if we can have a discussion to connect that with other health, education, and productivity aspects as well. Now, quick quiz for everyone, just to ensure everyone is still awake in this morning. In your guesstimates, I'm going to ask you a bit more. What's the Indonesian population that are aware and believe that climate crisis is caused by mainly human activities? I'm going to give you options, don't worry. One is 0 to 25%, up to 50%, up to 75%. Oh, sorry. Double pointed, sorry. Good guess, good guess. But everyone wants to answer that the same or
I saw it.
And the last one is up until 100%.
Yes,
So,
Yes,
I'm going to click which one,
Indonesia.
whichever you say.
Hamza, what's your guess, Hamza?
Ah,
Anyone online? Yes.
What's your best guess?
banyak sangat ketipuan.
Second.
45?
Second one, the
Second
question is,
First,
how many have already been aware and believe?
Aware.
Yeah.
Stage.
Okay, so it's a positive question. Second one, 26 to 40 to 50%.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, not yet.
But
But
you
you're getting there.
there.
0.0 to 20.
Gonna try and say again, right? So,
Yes.
0 to 25%.
Ah.
Not there yet.
So very concerned.
Yeah. No, yeah, so I guess because there are only two options, you can have a 50% chance of getting it. So I'm just going to get straight to the answer, which is 55%
Oh.
of awareness. But that means there are still 45% who are not aware.
Oh.
There are 45% who either not aware or doesn't believe yet that humans are the main causes of climate crisis. Again, we can go deeper into this. We can clearly define what aware means, what belief means.
Just aware.
You know, yeah, exactly, right? And we don't even talking about how many of them were taking actions, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So it doesn't tell much about what we, can change, because being aware is just very first step of making a change. Second question. I only have two questions. After this, we'll get into the lesson. Have you ever tried calculating and reducing your own emissions and pollutants from your daily lifestyle? This is going straight to my question now, and then also from the topic, and also the first question just now. First answer is yeah, I've been doing this for some time too. I think I saw some of the heads here saying no, never. But just in case you have been, maybe you've been trying this for a bit, or maybe not yet, but once had a plan to try this.
Yes.
No, but have been thinking about it so far, right? I guess guessing from everyone here, people will be saying either the third or fourth option.
No, I'm on one. Yes.
Okay, we have some optimistic here. Have been doing this for some time. So you want to share how you do it?
For example, if I can go to somewhere else, which I can use my own leg, so I use my own leg. I didn't want to use my own transport.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yep. So if you're clicking into one, then yes, congratulations. I mean, like it is supposed to be. Your lifestyle has begun to be more sustainable. I'm highlighting the word has begun to be more, right? Because sustainability is not a destination, it's a progress, right? We continually become more sustainable. We never ever stop being sustainable, right? If we stop, then it's not sustainable at all. Going back to it.
Yes.
So, and it's not easy, that's why it's not easy. But the question is, have your actions been based on science and technology? The question is, if you are taking that public transport, is it enough? Or should you be doing something else? And when we say enough, against what aspect, against what numbers, against what measurement that you can say, okay, I'm doing enough, or okay, I'm not doing enough. Oh, I'm actually doing more than what I should, right? That could be the case as well, but maybe very rare unless you are staying in Bhutan or you are in North Europe or something, yeah, right? So there's a case where we have to address that, yeah. So what's the story then? Why am I here today asking you that our actions have to be based on science and technology? Before we answer that question, just to make sure that we are on the same page here, right? I guess that's why we are sitting here today attending this morning lecture, because we know that the science has been settled. 97% of top climate scientists agree that man-made pollution is warming our climate. 97%. And some people are still denying. And these are top-notch scientists that are not driven by political interests. They know that they get funded by here and there, of course, and that's just reality, but they are maintaining their objectivity. That's why we can trust this 97%. The 3%, yeah, margin of error. people who have to be in the opposing view so that it doesn't become a utopia thinking. Then carbon pollution from human activities is now at an all-time high. I don't want to go too much deeper on the numbers and how dire it is and how difficult it is, but the position today is that we are at an unfortunately irreversible position already, because the carbon pollution is too much, and then the change is already happening. We cannot put it back again, and that's why there are lots of discussion between mitigation, which means reducing emissions, and also adaptation on how to adapt to the change and make that what I said before, changing ourselves first before we change the climate and the others. Yeah, turns out I still have the numbers. Just to show you the stark difference of how the numbers should be big and why I say the multiplication of emission and population is unequal. Now, if you look at 1850, back almost 200 years ago, there were only 1.2 billion humans, only 1/6 of what we have today. There were only 200 megatons of CO2. And then now we fast forward to 2011, that's just 12 years ago, a decade ago, we have 7 billion humans. And how much is that in multiplication of human? Only 6 times more human. But the amount of emissions is 32,000 megatons, which is 163 times increase in emissions.
Wow.
So imagine the 6 against 163.
Yeah.
Imagine the per capita emissions that we have been built because of many things. Yeah, industrial revolution, consumption here and there, right? There are so many things. But the bottom line now, we are now no longer in climate change situation. We are in climate crisis situation. But according to Oxford Dictionary, climate crisis is not defined as a bad thing, actually. Let us not be misguided with words, right? Climate crisis is actually termed as a turning point where something or someone could become better or worse. So that's why we have to take this not just a challenge as a potential threat, but also as an opportunity to become better. Then here we also show that the climate crisis, there is a scientific agreement that 2 degrees Celsius of change will be too dangerous for us. Now, let me give you a quick perspective. If we change the air condition in this room 2 degrees higher, will it really affect the warmth, how cold the room is? Maybe not, right? Maybe not that much, right?
No.
Just a bit. Of course, you can still feel the difference, especially if you are here for hours, right? But for the climate, it affects a lot because the 2 degrees here is called temperature. The 2 degrees that we're talking about is 2 degrees for climate, which is a correlation of many weather and many temperatures that are happening in the short term. And climate becomes a longer term. And climate is a kind of overarching or the skin of everything, because everything connects back to the climate. That's why a slight change in the climate consistently, because this has been changing for the last 50-ish years. I will show you a bit later. It's going to be very dire. And unfortunately, even IPCC report back in 2018, there is actually even a latest one, but I purposely didn't put it here because it was too dire. We only have 12 years and now less than that to reduce to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Even the latest IPCC report says we no longer will ever achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius. So we're going to definitely reach at best 2 degrees and even more. If we stay like this, we'll even reach 3 degrees Celsius. And then no one can really predict what will happen. So it's very, very pessimistic. But I don't want to get deeper into the pessimistic side because we want to talk about what could we do about it. Right? Let me show you a bit of animation back in 1880. The first ever climate records happen globally. The world map with blue means the the cold weather, and then the yellow red is the warm weather. Still in from 1880 to 1950, 60, we're still relatively okay. Now we're going to see already a lot of red zones, yellow zones, very red until today. So that's why we can see the stark difference and really how industrialization, how consumption has changed with climate and the weather of the global ecosystem. So not just per country, but the entire Earth, right? And also the melting of solar cap ice. So I think you can repeat that. Yes. So from 1970, there are so many solar cap ice that's getting smaller, right, Professor? Every 10 years, every 5 years now.
Yeah.
And then it's not denying the rising sea level, because of the melting polar ice. And let's not get confused about this, because melting ice, the north and south will also decrease rising sea level, because there is this iceberg philosophy, right? The ice is already inside the water anyway, most of it. But what's threatening is the ice that are at the top of the water, because that's not supposed to be in the water, but because it is melting, then the water, there will be more water because the one on top of the water is melted, right? In terms of the world mass of the water, doesn't change because it stays there. The water is still there. It doesn't. It's not the case where suddenly there are more water and there's more. No, it's because there are more water in the sea level, under the sea level. Okay. Now, warming atmosphere, right? Because the climate itself has been changing. There are warmer days now. The atmosphere is more weather. Some areas can then see intense flooding. The climate regulation, the ability of Earth to regulate itself, to recover itself from, from intense emissions. It doesn't, it cannot recover itself anymore because it has exceeded the capacity. I remember some numbers. I guess we can check it together whether it's still relevant today. But I think 5 years ago, we are already using the capacity of almost 1.5 Earth. So 7 billion people with all of our consumption and production, we're already using the resource of 1.5 planet Earth. So yeah, the Earth cannot hold on anymore to our emission. And then I think in 2030, we may be using 2 times of Earth. So we need another planet Earth. That's why the likes of Elon Musk going to Mars, find other planets and stuff like that, right? Because they know the situation that we are using much more resource than we should be, right? Yeah, again, repeating what I said, and then if you look at, unfortunately, cities like Jakarta, we are experiencing that high sea level of rising. Coastal communities are in danger, and also our food, our health are all impacted because of that. It's very systemic impact. And more extreme weather events likely happen. We are a bit fortunate that we are in a tropical, tropical area. We may not be experiencing that many hurricanes and stuff, but we have the other parts like tsunami and stuff like that because of the ring of fire and stuff. But in other places like the US and others, they are experiencing category 3 to 5 hurricane. That condition will devastate a lot of settlement areas. Now, one of the ways, my message here, is to look at climate crisis is through ourselves. If you look at the emission profile of everything in the Earth right now, and I'm zooming in on Indonesia actually. 25%, I'm sorry, this is in Bahasa Indonesia, but 25% is in heating and electricity. Another big one is from forestry and land use, and then another one from industry. The rest are from transport and energy and waste and buildings, right? But what binds all of these components together that all of our emissions are connected to our lifestyle and daily consumption. So it's not just about, those companies or producers are producing electricity, the heating power, the forest, and stuff like that, forest products, but we are also the consumer of those products, right? So it matters also, and it connects with how we look at food, sandang pangan papan, right, in Indonesia. The food, the clothes that we wear, the electricity that we use, the building that we live in, and stuff like that. So the theory is, when we talk about carbon emissions, we know that when we want to address any of the carbon emissions that we have in life, for example, taking that public transport, right? We know that we have environmental benefits out of it. We know there might be some emissions that we reduce because we are taking that public transport. But do we know that if it's negating enough? No, because when we reduce that emissions, are we then actually increasing emissions from somewhere else? For example, someone taking rather than taking his motorcycle to campus, they're actually running. Want to be more healthy, going to campus, right? From those running, they are becoming, of course, there's a benefit of it. They become healthier, but at the same time, they become more, hungry, right? More thirsty, more needing more nutrition back in to his body, right? Then he's actually replacing the emission he used from the transport into consuming something else. For example, he's then eating much more, right? Drinking much more, and every single drink and eat that he take extra will also add to that emission. So, I'm not saying that public transport then might be worse than taking, extra food and drink in terms of emissions. No, that's why we need to have measurement of it first. We have to count it first, ideally. But the idea is we really need to think twice. We really need to be careful on the decisions that we have. And then if we are a creature of this environmental sustainability, we have to be careful when we are practicing it. And one of the main reasons why this is still difficult is that most operations and facilities still use dirty energy, because that's the foundation of most emissions. Where it comes from is because of energy. Then consumer behavior at work stays affluent, lack of incentives, because people, we're still using fossil fuel anyway. Why should we bother unless we have now already lots of solar and wind energy? Then whatever I'm doing, it's still releasing emissions anyway. So I don't bother changing my behavior. No, that might be the case, yes, but that shouldn't be how we think. Because if everyone thinks like that, then we are self-defeating, right? But then one of the root issues is that we don't have enough incentive and ways to reduce that emissions. Then a change driver, I mentioned it already, we need enough emission data with M&E mechanism. So we know that we need that numbers, and M&E means monitoring and evaluation, because now then we know that some emissions can be managed, that some cannot. So we know what our limitations, what are our priorities, where should we investing our energy, our resource, and then people participation is key here, because again, the daily consumption context that I gave before, reducing emissions first, and then we sequester or we absorb that emissions. And I gave you an example of planting trees later on. And then by the end of the day, hopefully we can achieve that net zero mindset of emissions in organizations and as individuals. Going to speed up a bit considering time. Using the case study from my previous office, we showed that we are actually manageable. I don't know. Around. So we have 5 offices in Indonesia, and this is the portion of our emissions per month in terms of kilogram CO2 in 2018. Most of ours come from flight, unfortunately. We still do a lot of business flights, business trips to our provinces or abroad. And then also some local transport and taxi and stuff like that, right? But the biggest one is still transport, and it was not the pandemic yet, so we didn't change our travel policy yet. And we have known that our kilogram CO2 average per person per month is 300. Now, if you to give you perspective, the average Indonesian per year releases 2 tons of kilogram CO2, or around then 2,000 kilograms, right? Per year, dividing it by 12, then we have around 180 kilograms of CO2 per month. This is 300. So, and this is just from the office work that we are doing. So imagine, even the right people, they preach themselves as government organizations, but the emission is still higher than average Indonesian, right? So it's still lots of homework in that area. That's why we are doing sustainable land transport, zero emissions, and from waste management also, and also low emission food policy. So we change there's no more able to procure red meat in our food, in our workshops and seminars. Conscious consumerism as well, using our application that we developed to improve that consciousness. And then we also have low emission flight policy, combining flights and people and not going to transit and stuff like that. And then office energy efficiency and renewable energy, we procure the certificate from PLN as well. And then sustainable mindset that we have for everyone, like auto double-sided printing and stuff like that. Indonesia has done a bit. We benchmark it with our other offices, the US, China, India. Yeah, we're doing okay. It's not good. I mean, this is just saying the checklist. This doesn't say how effective or how useful the program is in terms of reducing numbers, right? Yeah, right. So now, emission and climate actions need to be transparent to have impact here. I mentioned about need to know the numbers because we cannot manage what we don't measure first. So let's look at our lifestyle today. I've been talking a lot about that, right? The transport that we use, the food that we consume, clothes that we wear, the city that we use, it all releases emissions. And we can measure it using mode or kilometers or kilogram per mode, per activity, right? It ranges very widely from very small, from 13 grams, 240 grams, and all other pollutants of carbon emissions, depending on the consumption factors. It adds to the environment. There's many substances: CO2, SO2, NOx, CO, PM2.5. If you're talking about air pollution, stuff like that, then it leads to this one as well. That's just one side of the coin. On the second side, Indonesia, for example, like in many other countries, we are very proud of our forests, right? We are very good at looking at the nature and tree planting. We may not be very good at managing it, but at least we still have some trees on the ground, or the new ones or the old ones. And every single tree have ability to absorb back the emissions that was released back into the roots of the soil, right? And it just stays there, and it doesn't disturb the atmosphere. For the tree, per year, we know there is also a number, 50, 100 kilograms, sometimes 1,000 kilograms. And the number really depends on the growth factors, right? So if we match this number between the left and the right, then can we achieve a neutral or a zero number, right? If we are releasing this many emissions from our daily lifestyle, how many trees do we need to make it zero, right? The question is there a behavioral response that we know? If I plant 10, 100 trees in IPB or our homes, would it be enough? Or do we instead need 1,000 or 10,000 trees? If I want to act more on climate, which action should I take? Should I reduce which part of my daily lifestyle, or which kind of tree should I plant? Right? Now, Just I'm going to dig a bit deeper, just one example from the transport side, because I guess that's what makes it different, yeah, from having this lecture today, whether online or on site. The only difference of emissions, I would say, presumably, is only on the transportation side. Because if you're staying at home, we would be still releasing emissions from using electricity, power up our laptops. We are still consuming food anyway. We are still wearing clothes anyway, yeah, and then we are still wasting stuff. But transportation, we don't do it if you're doing this online. And I came here, even the transportation reduces emissions. So I need to really think about this transport emissions. That's why I'm bringing the topic today. There are 3 ways that we can reduce emissions from transport, and in the bigger context is city planning, which is called avoid, shift, improve. So if you look at avoiding, then we are minimizing travel. Shifting to online conference, for example, that's already avoiding, and the emissions could be almost becoming zero, right? Or then we shift to non-motorized transport from motorcycle to bicycle, for example, or shifting from a private to public transport is already reducing, right? Or we improve how we use that technology. The technology needs to be advanced. Now I'm talking about electric vehicle and stuff like that, but we also need to be careful. If electric vehicle is used, one, if it's still a private transportation, then it still releases a lot of emissions because it doesn't bring as many people as it should be. Second, if the source of energy for that electric vehicle is still from fossil fuel base, then by the end of the day, it's kind of the same, the emission. It doesn't really reduce that. It's even actually could be worse because the amount of emissions that is being released to produce one electric vehicle is actually bigger than to produce one normal car, because of the battery, the exploitation of rare earth materials, yeah, Professor. And then also the waste management of that battery is very liquid, metal, and hazardous. So it's very, it needs to be really taken care of. Otherwise it's worse actually than a conventional car. So I'm going to just go through this quickly, just to show the cities area that are very not good at managing emissions and cause of traffic jams. It's not only just to the emissions, but also to the economy and also the prosperity of people, and also the health of people because of the daily PM 2.5, which leads to air pollution. I'm going to skip this because it's been mentioned before. There is a greenhouse gas emissions and there is a conventional pollutants, which are slightly different. The only point I want to make here is that greenhouse gas leads to climate change or climate crisis that we are talking about. Conventional pollutants lead to health issues, which is different than climate change issues. So when we talk about carbon dioxide, PM 2.5, it will affect our lungs and stuff like that, right? Directly. Climate change doesn't impact directly to our health. It impacts indirectly. The more climate change that we have, the worse pollutant that we are going to experience, right? Because, for example, the COVID situation that we have now, because the virus is entering our body already, and our body has been exposed to pollutants, which are being worsened because the climate is already changing. Then the effect of COVID becomes even more dire to us, even more difficult for us, because the body is already weakened because of that pollution. And the pollution is becoming stronger because of the greenhouse gas and the climate. So you know the connection already right now. The long story and how health COVID is always related to climate by the end of the day. And I guess there's discussion already separately because the source of ground zero of COVID is because of the transfer of virus from certain animals who loses their habitat because of deforestation and stuff like that. But let's not go deep into that, otherwise we're going to have a debate. Factors in estimating GHG and pollutant from land transport. There is a top-down approach and there's a bottom-up approach. Basically, to measure the amount of emissions from land transport, we need to look at the amount of fuel that we use, and also the what kind of activity, and including that is the fuel economy and also the distance that we are taking with that fuel. This is the equation. Basically, what I just said, that factor, number of trips, distance being taken from that trip, the electricity consumption factor, and then the emission factor. There's a coefficient there, constant coefficient for using fuel and electricity to power up our engines. And if you want to make it fair, public transport releases less emissions because there are more people being traveled with the same vehicle, right? This is the numbers. For every car and van and different ones, they have different electricity consumption factor, and we each with their own units. And also, if we go deeper, different types of electricity, different types of fuel, there is different emissions per liter of use. Right? May not be very different in terms of number, but it still helps. And this is how we calculate it. Very easy, basically. Just look at the distance. So the further we go, the more emissions that we release. And then the less efficient the fuel is, or the energy conversion from the kilometer per liter. Then, so imagine your car, if it has 15 kilometer per liter use of energy, or 10, the lower it is, the more emissions that we release. And then also the emission factor from the type of gasoline that we use. Multiplying that and dividing it, then we get the total emissions number. It's straightforward, basically. We just need to be careful with the items that we use and how we calculate. And then if we are only traveling by ourselves, then the emission is borne for just that one person, or we can share it with other people. And depends on the frequency of how often you see that, and then we can make a total number of it. We got a total emission for that person. This is the simplification that I was using, land transport emissions. Simplify it, I'm reducing the factor of driving behavior. So if you look at people who drive very cautiously, they are speeding up very slow, they are not braking the vehicle suddenly, then it will have higher fuel efficiency, actually. People who are often accelerating the car suddenly, it will reduce the fuel efficiency and it will release more emissions. But it's kind of small thing that I'm putting it as out of scope in this context. Also, vehicle engine maintenance. Ensure that after years of use, after vehicle production, it should be managed. And also, this numbers is not one kind of Bible number that we can always use. No, the science keeps on changing and developing and making it perfect. That's why some data are available, some are available now. So we are giving the best estimates possible using the Indonesian context whenever possible. Now, that's the land transport case, right? There are other, in terms of food, we can make it more sufficient, just consume what we need, buy local, give less meat because it releases more emissions. If we are using less packaged and processed food as well, there's also less emissions because there's emissions from to produce that package as well. And then food waste, methane, we're talking about very high global warming potential. And also, if we can grow our own food, that also helps. Wise, also when it comes to electricity, only turn on what we need, change the temperature of your aircon to be more, slightly warmer because that is less energy and emissions. And improve if you can change your house into solar and stuff like that. May not be easy, and all of this we very difficult for everyone to do all of this or even one or two of it together, right? But at least there should be a gradual change in how we do things in life. Also, for the way we treat clothes and electricity, treat your clothes so that it doesn't get damaged easily. You can stitch it back if it gets broken just a bit. And then also be creative in mixing and match, so you don't have to buy more clothes. Lastly, if you still get to buy more, be selective because there are products that are more sustainable than some others. For waste type, reduce, for example, from books to electronic books, and also use the cups so that you don't have to use plastic cups. And then lastly, recycle from, for example, bottles into pot for plants. One side, the other part is the growing and planting of trees, a nature-based solution. We know the photosynthesis side, right? I don't think I need to explain more. The CO2 is then processed by trees by sequestering it, carbon dioxide in the air, and capturing it, absorbing it, and storing it in the soil. And then oxygen, and then released into the air via photosynthesis process. These also have benefits beyond sequestering CO2 and into the improving water quality, sustainable timber products for the economy, soil health, food and forest products. It generates employment, biodiversity, air quality, and even relaxation for people to become more productive by the end of the day. And when you talk about forests and trees, we don't only talk about forests that are located so far away in remote areas, right? We also talk about forests in inner city area. Even single forests between big buildings, that also matters for reducing our emissions. And also there are smaller forests nearby the cities that are help regulating the water availability and quality inside the city. So it's all a system of forests and trees that should be together. We're going to be quick on this. Basically, to see how much emissions that are being sequestered by a tree, we need to see the amount of CO2 being stored in the trees before and after the growth of the trees. Right? So above and below ground biomass, the weight and how fat the tree is, how tall the tree is, it affects on how many emissions it can absorb. So from that numbers, this is the equation. The volume and biomass affects the function of the emissions from total tree biomass and usually the diameter of the log in the trees that is being measured, and that leads to the carbon stock, which is multiplied by the relative C and O and oxygen from that. And then we reach into the CO2 of that particular trees that are being measured over time, because the trees keep on growing from its baby stage until how mature it is, so the number keeps on changing. We assume that all of trees will survive for 20 years or 2 decades. That's the longest period of trees should be growing according to M.Sc-Session and all other research. We also put conservative scenario of half a centimeter stem diameter growth incrementally per annum. The wood density is the mean data that we have, and whenever allometric equation is not available, we use the generalized ones. And the process of doing this, sorry, this is small, but from left to right, there are 5 ways of how we measure the amount of carbon that can be absorbed by a tree. The most difficult one from the left and the easiest one from the right. The difficult one leads to higher quality, more accurate numbers of emission calculation, but it will also require more cost, more effort to do so. And going further into the right, the easiest one, the quickest that we can calculate emissions, but it requires, but it leads to less accuracy in the number that we are generating, even though it requires less cost to do so. This is the number from different ecosystem and tree species. It depends. The same species in 2 different ecosystems will lead to different number of emissions being sequestered. And 5 cases here. The calculation from allometric and samples and extraction factor and wood density leads there. This is the accumulation for 20 years of calculation from 1 or 2 examples. So you can see, for example, from 1 Avicennia marina, which is white mangroves, there are 91 kilograms of carbon dioxide can be absorbed for the next 20 years. For Venus pine, yeah.
Per tree, what kind of tree? Bushes, small tree or big tree?
Yeah. So in this calculation, it's a tree from very baby to year 0 until 20 years. Yeah. So it's maturity, and then it doesn't grow anymore after 20 years. And it's a accumulation. So we don't take the number as a snapshot. When we talk about this big or that big, yeah, we don't talk like that. We talk about the entire period of lifetime. Yeah. We can take, for example, if the height of the mangrove is this high instead of this, then maybe we can say that okay, this is the year 8 or year 11 of that tree. Then we can estimate, yes, by that time how many emissions that will be absorbed, but it still has more emissions to absorb, right? Because it doesn't reach maturity yet, Professor. Yeah, that's how we think in our calculation. Yeah, and then we put that into perspective in the emissions that we are sequestering. Then we reach into the number of trees that we are required to plant. So for one trip here, which is 800 kilometers away, we need to plant 1.6 pine trees, so that's 2, or 0.8 mangroves, so that's 1 mangroves for every. So you can imagine it's not much, right? So 800 kilometers, that's quite far for a car trip or a motorcycle trip, and we only need 1 tree. But this is just 1%. Okay, it's just 1%, and it's just from transportation. We look at the numbers from one of our partners back last year. It was one of the biggest ride-hailing companies in the world, and they are looking at literally millions of kilometers being traveled by their motorbikes per day in their entire operations, right? So imagine there are, and then when we calculate, they should be planting thousands of trees every single day. Basically, it's that high. So don't get fooled by it's just 1 tree. No, because it's there's a lot when we calculate it. By the end of the day, 7 billion people. This is actually my last slide. Yes. Just to put that into perspective of net zero, yeah, because when we talk about a lot already about knowing the emissions that we are releasing, and then also the emissions that we can reduce and absorb or sequester from the remaining ones, but that is called carbon neutrality. It's not called net zero yet. What's the difference? Net zero is our highest possible climate ambition, and it stays at 1.5 degrees Celsius that we have mentioned earlier, right? So why not make it fully countable? Why not turn from carbon neutrality into net zero? So what's the difference? Yeah. So when we talk about carbon neutrality, we release emission today. For example, 300 kilograms, yeah, from a single staff in office. From that 300 kilograms, we have access to planting trees, and for every single tree, there is a 50 kilograms being absorbed, right? So then how many trees that we need to plant or grow? 6 trees, right? Because 1 tree, 300 divided by 50, right? 6 trees. We plant it, we make sure it grows for 20 years, job well done, right? But that's carbon neutrality, because we stay the 300 to stay like that. We will always be planting then 6 trees, right, per year, forever, right? Then we get carbon neutrality. But the thing is, there are not always enough space in this world to plant all those trees, and we cannot ensure that all those trees will stay alive, right? So the idea is that from that 300, can we make it into 200? Can we make it into 150? And then after we reduce that, then we plant trees. So we no longer need to plant 6 trees. We only then maybe need to only plant 3 trees because of the 150 kilograms that we release. The idea is reduce first, and then we sequester. And then and the net zero idea is we reduce very ambitiously. And this even says we need to reduce 60%. Or even in big case scenario where we are in a highly emitting environment like oil and gas and stuff like that, even until 90% of emissions being reduced first. This is not saying that we have to always reach that number. Maybe difficult already, and it may not be feasible already yet. But the idea is to make us challenge ourselves that we can reduce first, then the remaining we can sequester. Do not always rely on planting today and sequestering it, because we will never reach full net zero. We will only reach neutral carbon. And then there is also a discussion where we plant more trees than we should, and that's called carbon negativity. So we're actually absorbing more carbon than we are releasing, right? So the idea of that, the deadline is globally 2050, turns out. But it's actually earlier than what Indonesia has committed in 2060, right? So we are lagging behind. The battle is getting more difficult now. But the idea is that neutralization of residual emissions have only to be done after the reduction or after the abatement of emissions first. And that's only this side of the story of mitigation. We don't yet talk about adaptation, right? The longer we delay the action to reduce climate change, the more emissions that we have to manage, the more difficult to get into 1.5 degrees Celsius, the more costly it is. So every single day even matters when we want to change the climate change. Now, my very last slide is just to gather us together and imagine in 10 years. I mentioned maybe only 7 years left until 2030. Imagine if you could become one of the champions of Indonesia, right? Or in your own countries, combining approach of development that are sustainable between lowering emissions and improving citizens' prosperity. Because planting trees helps people, right? If farmers are doing it, then we are helping their livelihood. If we are planting it ourselves, then we can take benefit from that trees. Even if that tree is a fruit, we can take the fruit for our food. Well, action by one city can be a pioneer followed by other major areas in Indonesia, and millions of people can join the climate action, recovering millions of forest sectors, livelihoods, and indigenous people. Now, the final slide is the 4 things that we can do now to support climate action and in science. 1, reduce your emission by shifting low carbon lifestyle. Today, this is just a summary of everything. 2, after reducing your emissions, sequester your emission by planting and growing of trees so that it becomes carbon neutrality and then net zero. And also give your critical inputs to science, technology, and methods. I mentioned already the science keep on changing, keep on developing over time. And share your stories with your friends, family, community, and organizations. Because the only way we can do this is if everyone is doing anything. Everyone is joining hands now, and it has to be consistent. It has to be done every single day. It cannot be just one big thing happening and then the day after that gone. Cannot be like that. Yes, that cannot be like that. So the idea is to turn this, and I'm not shouting for car companies or anything like that. Just an example from this missions into the future like this, where we are looking at areas in the cities where there are lots of trees, and we can see lots of kids, because what we are doing today is not just for us, because the danger that we are facing, maybe not so much today, but if we are looking at 2030, 2045, 2050, where we are, at our late days, 50, 60 years old, and our kids are just entering their university or their workforce, what kind of environment that we want to inherit to them? And there's some saying, and even religious saying says that the best people, in terms of religion, is also people who are living this world slightly better than when they first entered it. So contribute. Even small thing happens, and if people keep on saying to you, we may never reach that 1.5 degrees Celsius and more. People keep on saying if we just ignore that, then we may have, for example, hurricanes that are devastating 100 million people, for example, if we don't do that. But if we are still fighting it, then we may reduce that devastating hurricane to only affecting 50 million people, right? And that extra 50 million people that we save matters. It still matters, even though we never really achieved that 1.5 degrees. When we save 50 million people, that matters a lot, and that still have to find us to do something today, not giving it to the pessimists who say that we should not do anything anymore because we are doomed anyway. No, we as young people, have to be more optimistic and be able to break that boundaries and thoughts. And I'm actually using this perspective. I'm borrowing it from President Barack Obama, one of my favorite. So yeah, I'm going to close the session with that statement. Be contributive and imagine, put your vision on the board and see how you can contribute towards that vision that you want to create. And hopefully we can do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nanda. It's very inspiring. I think now every one of us want to be an environmental warrior. Okay? Yeah. After listening to Pak Nanda's lecture. So reduce first, then sequester. That's important. Okay. All right. That was so cool, Pak Nanda. Okay, now I open question and answer session. How many wants to raise a question? Okay, already 4. All right. 5. Okay. This is the only session, question and answer session because we only have 10 minutes to go. So 5 persons. And please say your question shortly, not boleh pakai buah-buah. Okay, speak first. Say your name first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nanda, for the presentation. My name is Fadlan Mohammed. Okay, I already see that WRI already make an application about measuring the emission, but only like 5,000 people know the emission. My question is how to enhance awareness to all people that we already in climate crisis situation. So we must do work and we can act to reduce it, because sometimes in this situation, we already know the infrastructure and the transportation is important. And then finally, we still use part of the hydrogen station. That's it. Thank you.
Maybe just directly the middle one.
Good point. And we do to every from
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. So Fadlan, yeah, okay. So yeah, I guess you are referring to M.Sc application. That's true. Yeah, okay. And yeah, I happen to know how to answer that question because I was the one who developed that application with my team, of course, back then, not now anymore. I have one confession to make and one, not defense, but another perspective on how we see the situation. So one thing is that the confession is that even for WRI, we could have done more. That's true. Not just to be more effective in developing our products, because we know that the product is driven a lot by complex science. You know, how to calculate and stuff, numbers, lot of things that may, youngsters like us may not always like. And we are a bit struggling on how to convert it into, easier communication method to people, right? So that's why we use some influencers, icons, and stuff like that to drive people to download the app. And even after downloading the app, are they really using it, right? Are they really maintaining their interaction there? And even until the end point of that application, it's actually to ask people to plant trees, and in worst case scenario, they are paying it. So there is a payment system inside that app so that people can pay for the trees that they want to plant to reduce the emissions that they are reporting to the application. Reaching that point where people are willing to pay is very difficult. People often stop at either entering the numbers or looking at the option of the trees. By actually paying it, wow, that's another story. Yeah. And it doesn't always lead to small like thousands or 10,000 rupiah number. Sometimes it shows you 100,000 rupiah number. It's quite big for some Indonesians, right? And we needed some strategy to convert that. That's why the conversion rate is actually not high as well in our application. Now, that's the first answer. The second answer is kind of our defense to that kind of people say, oh, there are not enough people using our application and stuff like that. But the thing is, getting people to use our application is actually not our first priority. Even from the beginning, even from the beginning on when we decide to use the application. Of course, we still need that application so that people can see the end-to-end story of our journey and how we educate things. Because by the end of the day, we pivot the application to be an educational app. The most users of the system inside the application or the science inside the application is in someone else's platform. I mentioned it to you already. One of the biggest ride-hailing companies. I cannot really name names because it's quite not okay. Grab, yeah. One of the biggest ones. They are using our system until today. And if you look at Grab application now, I should have put it in the slide actually. If you look at the Grab application now, go into the support the environment section, and then there is a carbon offset program set there, and there is a WRI Indonesia logo there with the emission application program. So what they are doing is that they are asking people extra money voluntarily, 200 rupiah for bike ride, 500 rupiah for car ride, and that money will be planted through us to plant the trees, and then they report it back to the customer. It may not be ideal because until today they cannot yet use the direct calculation of how many emissions and why should we be paying 200 rupiah and 500 rupiah instead of 2,000 or 5,000, right? And the numbers might not be 000. It could be 2,532 rupiah. Exactly. Yeah, that calculation that we have will always be like that. Doesn't lead into like real absolute number. Because it's difficult in their IT system, right? But just because of that simple 250, and people don't really think about paying that 250, 500, there are actually a lot of people doing it. And in reality, there are billions of rupiah collected every month just from that, right? And we, again, we are not, very proud of it or whatever, but we think that it's still useful. Still contributing because now people know there are ways to reduce their emissions just from that small money that they are. And we look forward to have more organization, advancing that knowledge, right? So because it's difficult to build our own customers, right? Then we just collaborate with other organizations so that we can reach more people, right? One company adopting the system, millions of people already have done.
Mr. Nanda, sorry.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, government of Philippines have introduced for who want to graduate from the university, they compulsory to plan to,
Oh,
yes, you want to graduate, so you have to plan to at least.
plan where? In university or?
They will provide the area.
Oh,
So can you imagine 100,000 of university students, they want to graduate, so they have plan to the.
What do they say as the reason of that planning?
Because
And that's mandatory, right?
because of the.
Okay.
Okay.
So one more thing, I just want to suggest, and this is not a question. This is from the YouTube. I watched this, I think a few years ago.
Dara, use the microphone so that the online participants can.
Here.
You hear me?
Yes.
I like to suggest to all the member, watch South China Morning Post. It's about Indonesian men turns barren hills green by planting 11,000 trees. It is a very, very interesting story about how the old men from the, I don't know which part of the Indonesia, which everybody think that how crazy I was planting a tree for the area which I think deforestation is very bad. But now, if you can see, the area is so amazing because they plant the banyan tree. Banyan tree. Okay, this banyan tree is not only provide the oxygen, but also can restore the water. So from the area very bad, and after that, the area is becomes nature. So I think maybe you can work from China stock. It's a very good. Maybe for the video next time, right? South China Morning Post. Okay. I think I think because when I'm watching this one, so I think this is an old man. So he can contribute something to the world. So why don't I am? Right, old man. So I think this is Indonesia, old man. So I think maybe all of us can see this one. One minute 12.
Oh.
What's the name of the man again? The name of the person?
Your band's name.
Your man's name.
Kidul Majid. But they have their own So China Morning Post, Indonesian and men turns barren hill green by planting 11,000 trees. Very interesting, very inspiring.
We once had a discussion in office, and we would really love to have more people like him, right? But I guess he's kind of a bit extraordinary case.
Yes, because all men, and after that, people think he's crazy, and after that, it's like, many years. Even in India also have the same person like this. So it's not about for the young, but also for the maybe before she going to the competition, right?
Inspiring people like that is extraordinary, yeah? And really average like us.
And the question is, how do we make an environment where we feel comfortable, where we can incentivize more people like that?
Yes.
Because it's not scalable, right? Meaning that not many people can do that. Because that's why that Kidul person is very extraordinary. To create that enabling environment.
That's the aim of this summer course.
Yeah.
Kidul Juniors.
The video actual. You will planting the plant. Betul, very inspiring.
Ya, Manifa, katanya.
Okay, next question. Manifa.
Hi, Mr. Nanda. My name is Manifa from Malaysia. So I have two questions. For your opinion, does family planning will help to reduce or control the gas emission and also some of the climate action? And for the second question is, for the, is it vehicle speed, will affect, the gas emission rate. For example, if we drive slowly or fast, so if fast, so the combustion will high. That's all.
Thank you. What's your name again? Sorry. Mudipa. Thank you, Mudipa, for the question. So I guess I'll answer the second one first. Whether if you are asking if whether the speed is slow or fast will affect, if that's the only question, it will not. Yeah, it will affect if there are lots of shift or changes between fast and slow often. So I'm talking about consistency here. So if you are driving in the highway, toll, freeway, right? We are constantly at 100 kilometers per hour, right? The fuel efficiency is very high. The emission will be very low there, right? But if you are in a city where there is a traffic jam, where we speed up and then we brake, speed up, brake, speed up, brake, the fuel efficiency is very low. The emission is very high per kilometer of distance. Yeah, because the machine, the engine is releasing more and requiring and releasing more energy to do that speed up and brake, speed up and brake. Yeah. Also the same if we are always slow, like we're always driving 20 kilometers an hour where we should be minimum 40 or something. There's also fuel efficient because it is consistent at 20 kilometers per hour. Or consistent at 100 kilometers per hour, the fuel efficiency will be high. Emission will be low. So I hope that answers your question. The point is how much change in sudden brakes, or sudden acceleration of the car will affect the fuel efficiency, hence the emissions. The first question is about family planning, but which part again, sir? The family planning.
Banyak ya. Family planning.
Does family planning can control the gas emission and so on? Because like Singapore,
population.
family planning can control the population of
Kerana sekarang
because high population will lead to
yes.
I'm not going to go deeper into the Thanos thinking. If you watch Avengers, but there is some but there is some interesting fact in it. It's not deniable. Of course, there are more people, there will be more emissions, but more emissions compared to what, right? We're going to get deeper into other topics, yeah. But I'll just simplify this. So if you're talking about having a new population, if the family planning is happening in countries that are still developing, like Africa, in African countries, or even in countries like Indonesia, which are now per capita is in the average or even below world average for emissions. If you are having more family planning there, it doesn't really actually matter. But if you are having a family planning in countries where emission per capita is very high, like the US, Europe, Australia, UK, and stuff like that, it will matter a lot, right? The point is, it's not the population that becomes the factor for more emissions, but the consumption per person, right? Because people in African countries, they're only releasing 0.something kilogram tons of CO2 per year, much less than the world average, and they're actually using less than one capacity of 100 capacity. Right? For American people, I'm not blaming people or anything, but it's just the fact. They are using more than 3 or 4 hours per person. So the affluents, then because they are using more electricity, they are consuming more things, and still in a dirty way, they are releasing more emissions. So again, I'm not saying that we should always, look at them and you are the culprit and everything. No, but the idea is, contribute. Yeah, everyone can still contribute. Of course, we need to look at when we have bigger issues, then we have bigger solutions to solve, right? It's much easier to look at how we can reduce people who are in the US who are releasing 4 tons, reduce it into 2 tons. We can see, easier way to reduce 2 tons, right? Rather than people in Africa who want to reduce from 0.5 ton, reduce it into 0.4 tons is very difficult. What kind of things that we can do anymore, right? To find that 0.1 reduction, it's difficult. So yeah, hope that answers your question. Yeah, it's not about the population; it's about the affluence, how much we are consuming per person, and that's why sustainability is a very personal thing. It's a very individual thing, mindset. But you have to do it together. So that if you have to.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, but looks like this thing is the last. That was the last question and the end of the question and answer session. Because Pananda, after this guy have to go to our low carbon village. Di mana ya desa binaannya they will learn about manage anorganic rubbish management there.
Can I tell you?
Yeah. Pengen? Oh. Huh?
Okay.
Oh yeah, we good. Excellent. Okay, maybe next time. Okay. Yeah.
But sounds fun, guys. So you guys enjoy it.
And mereka akan naik odong-odong. Odong-odong ke desanya. Mereka perform music. But sorry, it's only for the 15 participants who will go to Bali.